Hello, everyone. Welcome into today's webinar, Boost PMO Value, 9 Essential Steps for Project Success, presented by our Head of Management Solutions here at Educate 360, Brent Nair. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I'll be assisting and moderating today's session. We are in Zoom for today's webinar, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you via email after the session. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use the uh, Q&A option for our dedicated Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Brent.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Mariella. It's great to see everyone today. I hope everyone is enjoying this awesome fall day, if that's the weather where you're located. I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. So this morning we had a nice crisp 46 degrees. Quite don't have the leaves changing yet, but we're working on that. So it's great to have you all here. And I just realized that my tie matches the color of the font. Today we're going to, or the type we're going to talk about boosting our PMO value. As we wind down and move into the fourth quarter of 2025, one of the things that we hadn't spoken with or spoken about lately is the PMO. The project management office or portfolio management office, depending upon your organization. They're the unsung heroes, really, of our businesses, our organizations, of our entities that work with projects and project managers. And what we wanted to do today is basically talk about, hey, what are 9 ways or 9 steps where you can set up your PMO for project success. And so what are, as we said, 9 moves that you can make now in the fourth quarter that can carry you into 2026. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's go ahead and get started. So from an overview perspective, one of the things we see is a lot of times PMOs stall or they're having difficulty because they have too much work in progress. That's what WIP stands for. Or they're unclear on their purpose. Why are we doing what we're doing? Um, I don't know about you, but I know that I've been in projects as a team member, and I've also led projects where I'm like, why are we doing this project? It doesn't seem to make sense. And then the other point is we're reactive. We just take on work. Where somebody says, "Hey, I think this would be a great project." And so today, what we're going to talk about is one, how do we avoid that stall? How do we avoid that PMO slump? We'll call it that. And we do that with the three grounding principles of purpose, discipline, and deep work. If any of you are a fan of Cal Newport or know who Cal Newport is, he wrote a book about deep work. And that's where we are able to take time to do the work that's needed. In other words, multitasking is our enemy. And then lastly, we'll discuss each of these 9 moves to reset. I love the phrase execution and credibility because our PMOs are determined, hopefully, to be credible. Well, a lot of times if we are trying to do everything for everyone, we become a master of none. And so let's talk about everything. But first, Mariella, we have a poll for everyone. Would you please launch the poll? So, what are your most significant PMO challenges? Just curious. And if you don't have a PMO, please, if you're a project manager, what are your most significant challenges? Please click one of those 4 or pick option 5 and drop your answer in chat. Unfortunately, Mariella and I can't vote. We still have challenges. W- Yeah, we'll give you all a minute to answer. Yes, we need a multi-selection box, Donna. I agree. Maybe we should have said, what is your most significant PMO challenge? Kept it singular. All right. Thank you everyone for taking the poll. And out of our participants, it looks like the one that is the lead is the lack of alignment, workflows, or ownership. Love that. I see that all the time where we have PMOs and projects that aren't aligned with the organization's vision, mission, purpose statement, whichever one of those three you want to pick. And it's so important for us as project managers and as PMO directors or PMO managers to be able to get that alignment. So let's move on and start to talk about that. And that actually leads us into our first one. So the first step is to recharter or I didn't want to say reorganize as I was putting this together. So I chose recharter. That means really you are now saying that our PMO, our organization, we are aligned with our company, our organization, our enterprise, its purpose, its mission. And we are going to select, we are going to approve, we are going to align our projects within our portfolios and within our programs that meet that mission, vision, and purpose. So that means that we, as the PMO, we need to get senior leadership to buy into this. And of course, if senior leadership is not aligned or if they're misaligned and they have that my silo or my business unit takes priority over the organization, then we have a misaligned leadership team and they need to become aligned. And that's actually another webinar that we can discuss how to do that. If any of you are fans of Patrick Lencioni or have heard about Patrick Lencioni, he's an organizational psychologist, business organizational expert. I don't want to say guru, but he's written a lot of books around that. His organization is called the Table Group. But one of their bigger sellers was silos, turf wars, and organizational misalignment. I know I just butchered that title. So make sure that you align around the values and the mission. Publish it. And then lastly, if something is coming in, you get a request to do a project, you get a request to do this. If it's not part of that, say yes if. Or how do we align this with our mission and vision? We don't want to be a no necessarily. We want to be a yes and. Ideally, in our PMO, you could have, if you have it such structure, you can have a part of the PMO that vets projects. Most organizations or a lot of organizations have stage gates or phase gates where a project in the ideation phase or the idea phase, someone other than you or me decides whether or not it's aligned with our mission and purpose. So, step one, recharter around the value. Step two, set limits. We all know that we can only do so much at any given time, whether that's in our work life, our professional life, and yet we expect project managers, we expect project management offices, portfolio management offices to do more. The mantra that we have today, and it's a mantra I think that's killing us, is do more with less. Yet we all face that challenge, and I completely understand that. What we need to do though is we need to treat our portfolio or our PMO like a plate, not a buffet. What that means is I can only fit so much on the plate. Now, I've been to some buffets and I've seen some pretty tall stacked plates. I don't want that. What I want is a nicely proportioned plate, something that I can eat in one sitting, get up from the table, and walk away feeling healthy. Same thing for my PMO, same thing for my portfolio. What can we fit on a plate? Look at and run a monthly stop, hold, start, review session. In other words, look at what we have in progress. What work is in progress? Is it stalled for a reason? What's the blocker? What's the issue? Go back to some of those agile principles. Run a meeting and decide. If you need to, then drop or pause low value work. What that means is if that project is not going to give us as much value as what we need from a bigger project, then maybe we put more effort on that bigger project to get that value. Now, a lot of times you're going to need senior leadership to buy into that. Now, of course, with all of these steps as we go through, we could spend a lot of time just talking about each one. I know we only have 30 minutes, so we're kind of giving you a tasting, or as the chef says, an amuse-bouche before. So enjoy these tasty bites. Tighten governance is step three. Now, step three means we have to have governance. We have to be able to make those hard decisions. We want to make our Gates decisions real, REAL, and not theater. I've been involved with so many organizations. I've consulted with so many organizations where basically the PMO, the project manager, gets up and presents the projects in the portfolio and everything's a rubber stamp. No one is willing to ask the tough questions. No one is willing to look at those risks and those mitigations. And finally, no one is willing to stop those weak projects early. If we do, and if we are, we're protecting our capacity as well as our dollars. There are so many projects that have the sunk cost fallacy. Well, I've already spent 10 million. I might as well spend another million to finish it. That's the sunk cost fallacy. We don't want to fall into that. And the best way to do that is with governance. Step four is with our budgets and with money. So treat our budgets as guides. What that means is think about setting up quarterly funding, quarterly segments. Have your reserves, your contingency reserves set aside. Adjust those plans during a bump. I call that a bump, or anytime you have a risk that occurs. Instead of halting work, we know that we can adjust it. And then lastly, of course, we want to stay resilient and do our best to avoid overspending, that overspend shock. It's like at the end of the month when you look at your credit card bill and you're like, wow, I didn't realize I went to Starbucks that much. So treat your budget as a guide. A lot of times we treat our budget as it's concrete and set in stone, when in fact, because of unforeseen circumstances, we may need to adjust. And if we don't have those reserves, we can't adjust. And that brings us to another poll. Mariella, let's launch our second poll, please. Where do you see the greatest need for PMO investment over the next year? Since we're talking about budgets. Technology and automation tools. I had a feeling that was going to be the one. And I'm going to ask, you don't have to unless you want to put it in chat. I'm guessing though, a lot of those automation tools are around using AI, machine learning, etc. So anyway, thanks everybody for participating in those polls. So that leads us to let AI do the boring stuff. Now, Marielle and I didn't know how your answers would be, but I'd say we're pretty spot on in how we have um, outlined this. So yeah, I said let AI do the boring stuff. I've been an AI utilizer for many years. I used a lot of it. Of course, we've used a lot of it with Alexa moving forward until it became AI. It was Alexa for the most part. Um, but we want to use it with the boring stuff, transcribing minutes, being able to look at and review a lot of materials. One of the things that I like about AI, or in the machine, whether it's PMI's Xfinity AI tool or Infinity, not Xfinity, excuse me, that's Comcast. Infinity tool or other tools is I can upload a Excel spreadsheet of task lists with milestones, and I get a pretty decent Gantt chart or Gantt chart looking um, tool out of it. I can ask it to identify, look for risks. I can have it be a thought partner. Um, One of the things to keep in mind, though, about AI, it is not faultless. You need to review the results. You need to double check its work. You need to follow up. However, it can help a lot with some of the minutia, so to speak. Lastly, you want to publish your scorecard, or not lastly, sorry, step six, you want to publish your scorecard. What does that mean? Well, you want to show how your PMO is doing. How your PMO is doing, one, simple percent complete in your progresses. Now, there are tons of dashboards, tons of tools that are built into your project management information system, whether you use Microsoft Project or whether you use, Asana, whether you use all of them that are out there, Smart Sheets, etc. They all have dashboards. Now, of course, as with anything, it's only as good as the data that you're putting into it. Now, one of the things that it probably is not as good at is tracking your benefits. In other words, did we deliver what we said we were going to deliver? And what that means is not just the schedule, but did we actually see the benefits? Now, sometimes that can be a little difficult because we may not have benefits realized from a project until 3 months, 6 months, 9 months afterwards. However, your job and our job as the PMO is to figure out, okay, what benefits can we show while the project is ongoing? What are the benefits in our portfolios that we can show, as well as at the end? And these then become decision tools for our leaders, not just pretty red, green, and yellow stoplight scorecards, but actual decision tools. So you want to ask them, what information do you need to make a decision? And update it as much as you can. Now, one of the things that if you're in a predictive world, one of the things, and this is probably going to be a little controversial, especially if you're in a predictive or a traditional project management office, or you run your projects in a traditional way, is to run 2 capability sprints. Try out Agile. If you haven't already, try out Agile. Pick something that you have a gap in, whether it's resource planning, benefits management, etc., whatever, but try to run 1 or 2 sprints. Look at them, see how the work was, do your lessons reviewed, do your lessons learned, your retrospective, and then, if possible, take that and expand it further. In other words, maybe you come into a hybrid world in some cases and not just a traditional or only predictive. One of the things that I would do when I was on the construction job site and I was a PM for construction projects, is I borrowed the Kanban board and I'd create a Kanban board every Monday morning, and it would be in the job trailer or on in the floor, wherever it was. And everyone had an opportunity to see work in progress, to do, work in progress, done, waiting, or whatever the case may be. And so I borrowed that from Agile and brought it into my traditional project management. Step 8, don't fear change. Change is inevitable. I can remember as an early project manager, whenever someone would come about a change, my first response was no, which is usually a career limiting move. So I learned yes and. And so looking at, yes, we can make that, and here's what we need in order to do so. Or yes, we can do that, and here are the risks if it happens. So basically, what we're doing is we are making sure that we have an evaluation path. We're looking at our capacity limits to decide what we want to accept, and also scope churn. I don't want to say scope creep, because scope creep is unapproved changes that occur. Unfortunately, I work with a lot of organizations that say, "Oh, we have a lot of scope creep," and I ask them, "Well, what do you mean?" And they say, "Well, we have a lot of changes that happen and are approved once the requirements are gathered." That's not scope creep, that's scope churn. So number 9, last last step, secure the executive relationship. Our job is to move from a transactional reporting PMO, transactional reporting body, to a collaborative part extension of the leadership team. We want to ask for their feedback, involve them in shaping the work. And then, of course, use the dashboards to support the dialogue. In other words, that's a way to engage in dialogue, not just, oh, okay, that's all I need. See you later. So, 4 things to review. 1, make sure we anchor the PMO in our vision, mission, build the capability, make sure you do some AI sprint, have smart change control, executive leadership, partnership. Operate lighter, use budgets as a guide, use AI to help you. Maybe you can publish your scorecard with it. And then lastly, in the next 30 days, pick 3 moves that you're going to do, define the owners, and set the cadence or set the speed. So as we get ready to move into questions, a couple of things. One, wanted to just let's say thank you all for joining. And if you have any questions or anything that you need, please reach out to us here at Educate 360. Any of our program that we offer, from Watermark Learning to Six Sigma, as well as our Tracom, cyber test, etc. And Mariella, you've got some exciting news to share, I think.
Absolutely, Brent. So just wanted to give our audience another minute to throw in any last minute questions or feedback in the chat. But I did want to mention we had a question about the recording. You will absolutely be receiving an email with the link to the recording in it, and you'll also be receiving some info on some spooky savings at the end of the month. So be on the lookout for that. We had a great comment that really resonates with that poll, that second poll we ran. Someone mentioned that they were going to invest in AI, machine learning, and going into the
Mhm.
cloud in 2026 with these processes. So that's really interesting feedback for us. I think that also gives us an idea of where our audience is at in their maturity for PMO. So really amazing stuff. Thank you all so much for engaging on those polls, and as per usual, yeah, thank you so much, Brent, for all this
Sure.
amazing
And
info.
before we wrap up, I know we have a minute or two. Are there any questions? If you have a question, drop it in chat. love to hear from your questions. And thank you for that tasty treat, Mariella, for our spooky Halloween savings.
Absolutely. I have to give it up to our amazing webinar audience that they always have to get on the inside scoop of stuff. So I have to
Exactly.
have to give it up to them. But I believe that question about the recording was it. So I want to take a second to thank our amazing audience for joining us. I know
Yes,
this was a lot of great info in a short amount of time, so we really appreciate you spending your time with us today. But besides that, again, yeah, we will be following up in an email. And yeah, thank you again, Brent, for everything. This
you're
was
welcome.
so
Thank you all.
fantastic. Yeah. So hopefully we have some really great takeaways for our audience. But yeah, if you need anything in the meantime, please go right ahead and contact us at projectmanagementacademy.net. And we will see you all very soon. Have a fantastic rest of your week.
Thanks, Lori.
Bye for now.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lori. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great
Alrighty.
day.
Likewise. Alrighty. Bye, everyone.